Welcome everybody. It's been a rough morning. We have messed up a lot of times on this stream, so this is the third and final take, and we're going to do much better. So today we're learning about how to maintain health without exercise. And exercise is obviously going to be the most healthy situation, but some people can exercise, some people refuse to exercise, so this can be good knowledge for you or somebody that you know who doesn't exercise. So I've already got a little bit written down, but we're going to still roll with it. So here is blood sugar. We don't want to have high blood sugar all the time, and exercise is actually one of the most effective ways to control our blood sugar. Some studies show that regular exercise is more effective than even some medications at controlling blood sugar. So if we're not going to exercise, we need to think, how else can we control our blood sugar? One way is to eat a low-carb diet. So if you're eating a high-carb diet, you're going to be repeatedly spiking that blood sugar over and over again. And if we do have a high blood sugar environment, when our blood sugar spikes, our insulin spikes. And if we do that often enough, we're going to see an increased risk in type 2 diabetes, where your body is not responding to that insulin. And then type 2 diabetes is not the best outcome for your health, because then you are not actually able to regulate your blood sugar with your insulin. So exercise helps with that. And if you're not exercising, you're going to need to regulate this yourself, partially through your diet. Another thing with your diet you can do is you can eat a high fiber diet. This will reduce the blood sugar spikes because fiber is a type of carbohydrate that doesn't break down very well. So a high fiber diet can help you out. Another situation is after you eat a meal, your blood sugar is typically going to spike. You could try to be active after your meal. So this doesn't mean you're going to go out and actually do a workout or anything. This just means you can do some chores, maybe take out the garbage, clean the dishes, do whatever you want to do. Just try to be active, because that's going to help reduce that blood sugar spike after your meal. Another thing, and this would be if you did 20 to 30 minutes after your meal, that will be enough to lower that blood glucose spike. Another way is you could stand. So standing for 20 to 30 minutes actually decreases that blood sugar spike as well. So you could get a standing desk if you're trying to work from home or something. I recently bought one of these, and so I make sure that I'm standing up after I eat a meal. That will be just as effective at reducing that blood sugar spike as being active. So try to do something after you eat a meal that doesn't involve sitting, and you should be pretty good. That'll help you control that blood sugar. And then there's one more thing about blood sugar. So we have cholesterol in our body. Cholesterol. And we have good and bad cholesterol. The good cholesterol is called HDL. This actually improves our heart health. You can get this from eating seeds, nuts, olive oils, those kind of things. We also have a bad type of cholesterol called LDL, Low-Density Lipoprotein. This is high-density lipoprotein. So with this low-density lipoprotein, there are actually two types. We got small dense and large buoyant. So it turns out that large buoyant LDL is healthy for us. So we want some of this. What becomes unhealthy is if we have a high inflammatory or a high inflammation in our system, we can start converting large buoyant to small dense, and a high sugar environment can lead to a high inflammation environment. And then these guys, small dense, are not good for us. So what happens is if we start converting these over to these, because as these get taken into your cell and they can be used for repairs and stuff, and if we have a high inflammation environment, they convert to small dense, and then they stay circulating in our system, building up plaque and that kind of stuff. So we want to avoid a high sugar diet, because we also then may increase our plaque buildup. So so that's kind of how we can work around controlling our blood sugar. We also have high blood pressure, which is not an ideal situation. This just puts more strain on your vascular system and your heart. And a diet high in salt intake is going to increase blood pressure. So exercise can help, regular exercise can help decrease blood pressure, but again, we're trying to not do that with this video. So try to, get that salt down a little bit lower in your diet, because otherwise having a high blood pressure is not going to be ideal. Next, we have insulin-like growth factor 1. So IGF-1. IGF-1 is a hormone that is particularly produced when you eat a high protein diet. Now, this isn't always an issue, but it can be an issue if you are eating a high protein diet and not exercising. So we've all heard stories that say increased protein, well, maybe we all haven't, but increased protein intake leads to cancer, right? I've seen lots of news headlines that say this, but it's more complicated than that. So the way it works is they found that if you eat a high protein diet and you don't exercise, your risk of cancer goes up. If you eat a high protein diet and you drink alcohol, your risk of cancer goes up. If you eat a high protein diet and you smoke, your risk of cancer goes up. However, if you eat a high protein diet and you do exercise, your risk of cancer does not go up. So what happens when you eat protein is your IGF-1 increases, starts circulating around, and IGF-1 helps cells live longer, which is a good thing sometimes, but if we have excessive IGF-1, it can increase the survivability of cancer cells, and that is not going to be ideal. So what we want is we want to be using our IGF-1, and exercise uses our IGF-1. So instead, since we aren't exercising, that means we want to eat a low protein diet so that we do not have excessive IGF-1s floating around. And what a sedentary amount of protein looks like if you're not exercising is 0.8 kilograms, or 0.8, let me rewrite this, 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is how much protein you need. And that's not going to be very much, actually. That's going to be like one hand size of protein per day plus your other meals, and that should probably get you enough protein. So if you need to convert your pounds into kilograms, you would do pounds divided by 2.2 equals kilograms, and then this number times by 0.8 grams will equal your daily protein requirements for a sedentary individual. So don't overeat that protein. We want to keep those IGF-1 levels low if we can. And then another thing that is difficult without exercise is maintaining body composition. So this is your fat mass, percent fat mass to percent lean mass. And we want to stay in a healthy range. I actually have a chart here that shows the healthy range again. So for males, you're looking at maintaining somewhere between 8 to 25%, depending on your age. As you're younger, you only want to have 8 to 19%, and then for females, 21 to 33%. These ranges aren't always set in stone, but they are pretty good indicators of where you should be at. So we need to maintain that healthy middle ground. And if we think about your food consumption, we have a basal metabolic rate. For most people, this is between 1,200 and 2,000 calories. If you are sedentary, you can add an additional 2 to maybe 400 calories in your day. And then typically if you exercised, this would add an additional, or this would make you burn an additional 300 to 400 calories per day, typically. So what happens if you're not exercising is sometimes you can be eating too many calories. And that is going to lead to excessive weight gain, which may not be healthy for you. So we want to try to maintain that, because if we're carrying extra weight, it's just going to lead to an unhealthy environment for our body to be living in. You have decreased immune function, all kinds of problems. So another issue with this too, and we're going to talk about bone health in a little bit, is if your body composition is too low. So sometimes if you're not exercising, you might not be eating enough. So we want to make sure that you're for sure eating enough to maintain these caloric amounts, because if you're not, you can have compromised bone function, which we'll talk about why that is important on this next page. Okay, so some other issues we have is beta amyloid buildup. This occurs in our brain. It's like a plaque for our brain cells, and this can lead to increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. I'm not sure how to spell Alzheimer's, but we'll give it a go. An increased risk of Alzheimer's disease, which is kind of where you forget some things. Your brain isn't remembering things, and it can be it's a rough disease to deal with. So exercise helps decrease beta amyloid buildup, but also sleep is one of your number one ways. So you want to make sure you're getting 8 hours of sleep if you aren't exercising. And so if you notice, one of the things about not exercising is you need to be more on top of your game. So you need to eat better, you need to sleep better. If we go down to mood and stress, it is the same thing. So we've seen rates of depression increase if you aren't exercising. Depression, anxiety tends to increase if you aren't exercising. And sleep, again, for 8 hours is going to improve your rates of depression. It's going to improve your rates of anxiety. So we want to try to sleep during our days. So again, sleep becomes much more important. I thought I had something else on that. Oh yes. Another thing to help regulate your mood and your stress is relationships. So you want to have healthy relationships with people. Humans are social creatures, and they find that if you are not hanging out with people, you can sometimes increase your rates of depression, of stress, anxiety, and so on. So make sure your relationships are on par, make sure you're sleeping well. And then on top of that, because you're already not putting yourself in the best environment, you want to avoid smoking and drinking, because these are going to add unnecessary risk factors. A lack of exercise is already a risk factor. And so if you aren't exercising and then you tag on these two types of risk factors, and then maybe you're not eating right and you're not sleeping right, well, now you have a whole bunch of risk factors. So trying to eliminate as many risk factors as possible if you're not going to exercise is kind of the way you can navigate that. All right, so we have a few other things that we can maybe do to try to augment some exercise benefits. So one of the things about humans is you could consider us to be, let's call us anti-fragile machines. So we're fragile in some capacities, right? If you fall off a building, you're going to be fairly fragile and you're probably not going to bounce back from that very well. But if you give yourself stressors that are minimal that you can recover from, you're actually going to become stronger from those. And this is why exercise is so great, because it is a stressor, and once we stress ourselves, break ourselves down a little bit, we actually become stronger. So we want to somehow introduce some type of stressors into our body, into our system, so that we have, so we can just recover from that and become stronger, I guess. So one of the things we can do is we see these are things called heat shock proteins. And heat shock proteins can mimic some of the effects we see during exercise. Part of this is because when you do exercise, your body temperature increases, and this makes some changes to these heat shock proteins that are beneficial. So it can help your cardiovascular system. They've seen differences in cardiovascular disease in people who go into the sauna. So trying to increase your body temperature is going to increase your heat shock protein production. And this, again, can increase your heart health. It does some other things. They found that people recover quicker from surgeries if they do some heat training beforehand. So, for instance, if you have a population, maybe somebody who is not able to exercise due to some medical issues, but then they have to go under surgery, it may be beneficial for them to go in the sauna, increase their body temperature for a week beforehand, and then go and get surgery so that they can recover quicker. So muscles tend to recover quicker if you've been going in the sauna or something like that. Interestingly enough, heat shock proteins also increase with like ice baths or like polar plunges or something like that. So there's less evidence on this than the sauna, but basically they are called heat shock proteins, but it turns out that temperature shock in general may activate these proteins. So, you could just call them shock proteins. So this would be a good way if somebody is unable to exercise to get some of the benefits of that increased body temperature, and maybe even some of that, that ice bath type stimulus. So there you go. You can use your environment to augment some improvements. Okay, I'm going to answer questions in a little bit here, so I'm going to finish up this. So we also are lacking a spike in our heart rate when we don't exercise. So if we aren't getting that spike in our heart, again, is a muscle, and so it's not exercising, and so it's slowly going to become atrophied over our lifetime. So we want to find ways to actually attempt to increase our heart rate. Since we're trying to stick with no exercise here, you want to try to do light activity. Maybe try to build it into your life. So, walking upstairs. I know when I walk stairs, my heart rate really gets going. So you can kind of throw that into your life. If you bike to work or class, you can try to commute and get exercise that way. And then in order to get that spike in heart rate, maybe you bike to class, even though you can't do that anymore, obviously. But you don't want to get really sweaty before you bike to class. So what you could do is just bike nice and easy to class, and then on your way home, you could increase that intensity. Maybe you're going to shower afterwards so you can sweat a little bit. And then that can, you're exercising, but you're kind of hiding the exercise. Playing games can also help. So when you go play some basketball, typically you're not thinking about it and you're just having a good time, so you're getting your heart rate up there, so you can hide that. Again, it is kind of exercise, but do what you can there. If you're going to walk your dog, maybe, let's go dog over here, you can run with your dog, right? Dogs love to run. So if you just put in a couple bursts, like hide some HIIT training in there where, sprint with your dog for 30 seconds. See how fast you can go, see if you can keep up. And then walk again, recover, and then do that again. So try to hide some heart rate spikes in there so you don't actually have to go to the gym, because that's just going to overall be beneficial to exercise, probably arguably your most important muscle right there. Okay, and then again, back to this lack of stress. If you aren't doing any exercise, you're not really stressing your muscles, your ligaments, your tendons, or your bones. So let's go to bones first. If you're not stressing your bones, you can get osteoporosis. Porosis. And this is a weak bone structure. And especially when you get old, it's not going to be ideal, because if you do get old and if you break a limb, it takes you a lot of time to recover. So when you're healthy, your bones recover in about 6 weeks. If you break a bone, I've broken plenty in my life. If you get old though, and you already have osteoporosis, so you already have weak bones, and then you're trying to recover with your, repair your bones, it can take a long time. Sometimes you might not even recover. You might need plates. So, maybe up to 4 months recovery time. And when you're old, and if you break a hip, and then, infection risk increases, and it's not a good situation to have a good, healthy life when you're older. So we need to find some way to increase our bone health. One way is to make sure you're eating enough. So your basal metabolic rate, again, about 1,200 to 2,000 calories. If you're eating less than this, it's typically going to reduce your bone mass overall. So we need to make sure we're eating enough if you're not going to be exercising, because that's going to help you against that osteoporosis. Particularly women need to be exercising so that they don't get osteoporosis, because they're at a higher risk. So some nutritional things, like I said, increase your calories at least to a point where you're not eating too much, but you need to be eating enough there. Iron. So women tend to have lower iron as well. Sometimes men do too. And they have some people do prescribe iron supplements to people with osteoporosis. You can get this through eating red meat. Spinach is high in iron, but it's not as absorbable as red meat is. So red meat is definitely superior. You can eat in a cast iron pan. That's going to be iron. You can take iron supplements. So they have iron pills. You can take liquid iron. The thing about taking iron supplements is you want to take vitamin C with your iron so that you absorb more of it. And you don't want to eat calcium or take a calcium pill or drink milk or something when you take your iron supplement, because that actually blocks iron absorption. So you can do that. Some people do hormone therapy, when they do start suffering from osteoporosis. So you wouldn't do that as a preventative thing. Obviously, calcium. Everybody knows calcium improves bone health. So drink your milk or dairy or however you're going to get your calcium into your diet. Those are some ways. But what I would recommend with this is just finding a way to do a minimal amount of stress on your muscles and your bones. So if you are going to make a quick workout, maybe you just do some push-ups in the morning. Maybe you do 20 push-ups. Maybe you do 10, then you do 10 later. Do some, let's say, lunges here. Maybe do 20 lunges each side. You can do some Supermans because we want to have a strong back. So this is just going to be a really brief, maybe 30 Supermans. And then people like crunches, so then we'll just do some crunches here, sit-ups. Let's do 30 of those. So this workout will take you like 4 minutes. So maybe if you add this to your day, to your week, 3 times a week, 3 times per week, that can help offset some of those. And you're doing very minimal, right? You're doing 12 minutes of exercise. Again, not ideal, but not terrible there. So, okay, I'm going to ask some questions, and then we're going to try to throw this into a weekly schedule here. Or answer questions, I guess. So, do you think because of self-isolation, there will be a spike in depression and anxiety? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, potentially. Let me switch over here, actually. Yeah, potentially we could see that because loneliness could be a thing right now, especially if people don't have contact. Luckily, we have really good devices, so I can talk to you guys this way. There are ways for people to connect, and who knows, it could be the opposite. People could start appreciating more things because now life has changed. They might appreciate their job more, so it could go either way, but people are probably not eating as healthy, probably not exercising as much. They might be doing more self-care because they got more time, so it could go either way there. And after life resumes, a normal decrease. Yeah, I think we will see a decrease when life resumes, whether it's good or bad for people. So good question there on the relationships. Next question. So in these times, most of us are stuck inside with the same people all the time. What to do to make a relationship good, not having arguments, being nervous, sometimes, etc. Yeah, so actually next week, I think we're going to move. We might do financial health next week or relationships. I haven't decided. So we'll get into more detail. One of the things is just knowing how you are and how your people around you are. So are there things that you that annoy you about other people? Maybe you can let them know nicely, like, hey, when you do this thing, it just really irritates me. So that can help them moderate their behavior so that you don't get so angry at them. And then maybe they can do the same for you, right? So people do need their space. So you might want to set aside some time. Maybe people don't like to talk in the morning or, before bed or whatever. Give the people around you some alone time, know how they like to, handle their life. And this is kind of negotiating. So you want to learn to negotiate. Let's say your brother or sister is just really annoying you, and you can say, hey, I know you want to do whatever, but in the morning, I hate you when you do this thing. So try to not do that. So, try to negotiate so that you guys can work together and just learn how each other operate. Good question. Is there any way to recover from osteoporosis once you develop it, or once you have it, is there no way to get out of it? Yeah, once you have osteoporosis, that is your life. When you're young, you're developing most of your bone density and most of your bone structure, and then you're kind of holding on to it for the rest of your life. So if you didn't develop that when you were young, whether that was because somebody had an eating disorder and they weren't eating enough, or just lack of exercise combined with genetics, and particularly women have a higher risk of this. So yeah, it's very unfortunate. Hormone therapy can help and hopefully improve some of that bone density. But at the current moment, there are some new technologies that might be improving that. But at the current moment, I haven't read anything that really is a game changer in terms of improving osteoporosis. Hopefully, but at the current moment, you need to take care of yourself. So another question. Does coffee affect blood pressure? I've heard it increases it and that tea is a better alternative. So I'm not 100% sure. Caffeine probably does increase blood pressure if I had to just guess. But then if you're drinking caffeine or tea with caffeine, that might also increase your blood pressure. So I don't 100% know, but if I had to guess, I would say that it probably does, and they probably both do, unless you have caffeine-free tea. But again, I'm just guessing there. So let me check, since I streamed on the wrong channel before, let me check my questions from the last class and make sure. So we had one question, what is LDL? Again, it's a form of cholesterol. I think I covered that better this time. Somebody asked if naps help. So yes, naps do help. When you're talking about beta amyloid particularly and stress reduction, you want to make sure you're getting your full REM cycles 4 in a row, because your sleep waves change as you go in and out, and they change throughout the night. So your last sleep REM cycle is going to be most beneficial. So naps do help though. So if you do take a nap, you want to limit it to 20 to 30 minutes of rest there. So we talked about the recovery time for osteoporosis. If you break a bone, it's going to be longer, probably 6 weeks again for people who are healthy, and who knows how long, depending. It's going to be different based on everybody and where you're at. So it could be significant, right? And they might even have to put plates in to keep your bone together. So not a good situation. And then we talked about the foods that can help prevent osteoporosis, but exercise is going to be one of the best things combined with eating enough calories. So, okay, we got good questions overall. Let's just take one more look here. So let's say you are going to be not going to the gym or not trying to exercise. How can you put that into your life? So let's just say, well, I'm gonna grab my old sheet here because I did a pretty good job on it, I believe. So this is the one I made earlier. So again, with cardio, we're gonna avoid this right now. To stay healthy, you need 150 minutes of moderate activity per week for cardio, and then you need 2 resistance training days. So if I'm gonna try to make this into a week, let's say you have to walk your dog, or you can walk somewhere and take 20 minutes. Maybe you walk, who knows where, just a 20-minute walk anywhere you need to go instead of driving. So do that walk. Then let's say on Tuesday, if you clean your house, cleaning your house is actually low activity or like low level cardio if you're doing enough. So maybe you just want to clean your house for 30 minutes. That can help get you some cardio there. If you were still having class, maybe you're going to bike to class this day for 30 minutes. This puts us so far at 60 minutes, 80 minutes. Let's say we take Thursday and Friday off because we get a little lazy. Saturday, maybe we go for another walk. We walk our dog, walk to a store. Some people can't do that right now, but most of us still should be able to walk outside. So now we're at 80 minutes, now we're at 100 minutes, so we're still about 50 minutes short. So then add another 30 here. So now we're at 1:30 just from having 5 days of light activity. A way we can augment this is we can add intensity. So if you're exercising at a high intensity, you only need 75 minutes a week to stay healthy. So we can have these low level activities and we can combine moderate intensity with high intensity. And so let's say let's say you're going to class for future reference, or you're biking to work or whatever it is, and it's 15 minutes there. On your way home, because you don't want to get sweaty before you go to class or go to work, maybe you bike really hard home so you get a little bit of intensity. So instead of having to get this 150 minutes in, it's going to lower itself a little bit. So if you get 15 minutes of intensity there, and then on Saturday if you bike again with 15 minutes of intensity home, whether you're going to work or class, and these can work on any days. If you did this, you got 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 15 low intensity, and then another 20 minutes. So we got 30, 1 hour, or 60 minutes. We got 100 minutes of low intensity activity, and then we have 30 minutes of high intensity. That's probably enough to maintain heart health. And then if you can throw in some of this, where do my workouts go? If you can throw in this workout here, just real easy, twice a week to get some muscle tension and some bone stress, that's a good way to maintain your health without actually having to go exercise a whole lot. So, all right, we will wrap up this video. Thanks for the questions. We finally got a good take. So appreciate you guys hanging in there, stopping by, and I will see you guys on the next video.